Welcome back to True Crime, Finding Closure. For those of you who are new to us, welcome, welcome, welcome. And for those of us who are joining or coming back and joining us again, welcome back. My name is Juliana, and this is
Barb.
And we want to thank everyone out there for your support. I went in to look at our thing last night, and we've got a lot of subscribers. We ask that you continue to subscribe, like, and comment, post any questions, thoughts, feelings that you have. Any other cases you may want us to look at, post them, let us know, all that good stuff. But again, thank you for all your support and the love out there of our family, friends, and people out there. Spread the word, talk to people, get our name out there, people. Let's do this. Anyways, the more support we get and the more help we get, the longer we can bring these true crime stories to you. And again, I'm going to apologize for our absence for a little bit. We had some personal family stuff and that was going on, and some illness, and it just was one thing after another. But we're back and we're ready to go again, and we'll be bringing more true crime stories at you over the next several weeks. We've got several cases lined up and in store for you from various parts of our country. So sit tight, grab your favorite bowl of popcorn, and let's begin. This week we delve into I think probably one of the most bizarrest, strangest, and mysterious cases. This is one I actually just happened upon. I was looking for other cases, and I saw this. It was on a different, not podcast, but a different chat group that I'm a part of, and I was like, I don't remember hearing about Karlie, and I went and looked on it, and I started researching, and this is about Karlie Guse. She disappeared in California, which we'll get more into here in just a few minutes. But is one that, for me, as a behavioral analyst and a forensic analyst, in the forensic psychology and stuff, it makes no sense to me. And as a person who grew up in a small town, it also doesn't make sense to me, because and you'll understand when we get into it, how it just doesn't jive. There's no pieces that fit together. And I think the hardest part about this particular case, and a lot of the ones that we do, is that it was preventable. And that is probably the hardest thing with this case, is that it is preventable. And that, and when you get these cases, and in my career, I've dealt with a lot of these type of ones where they are preventable, where they are, and those are the ones that are hard. It's like, why didn't they do certain things? Why wasn't certain things done?
Hindsight 2020.
Hindsight. Yeah. But yeah, it was so preventable, and it makes this even harder to deal with and to even understand. You want to scream and shout at someone, why didn't you do this? But you can't. You are a parent in 2020. But anyways, Karlie Guse. She was born on May 13th, 2002, to the parents of Lindsay and Zachary Guse. When they were, she also had an older brother named Kane. And they lived, pretty normal life. And then, unfortunately, as some marriages do, her parents ended up divorcing, when she was just a toddler, around 3 or 4 years of age. And, eventually Zach remarried someone by the name of Melissa, who we'll get into a little bit later. She would have, basically she became her mom in all intents and purposes, because when she was about 6 years old, she ended up moving in with her dad. And that family, and her stepmom, and she had 2 little brothers that Melissa and Zach had. One was 9 and the other one was 10. And then, of course, her older brother lived with them. Periodically would go in and out, stay there for a few days, and then, as young college guys do. He was 20 at the time of her disappearance. But they all lived together. They all were happy. They would go hiking, and from reports from them, and from the parents, from Melissa and Zach, and from Kane himself, they seemed to be a happy family. They'd go hiking and fishing and camping, and a lot of outdoorsy stuff because of where they lived. That was kind of the thing to do. In August of 2018, Karlie moved with her father and stepmother to Chalfant, California. It's a rural community in the Sierra Nevada between Yosemite National Park and the state of Nevada. Barbara will be giving more information in a bit about the area where she disappeared, because, unlike a lot of other cases we do, the area in which she disappeared plays a big role because of and you'll understand the vastness and how it plays such a giant role in her disappearance, because it's baffling. Yeah. But as I said, Barbara will be giving more about the area where she disappeared. Given its size, for this little neighborhood, a lot of them went about 15 miles down the road to Bishop, which is about, like I said, 15, 20 miles down the road. The Gusés lived on Ponderosa Street in this little White Mountain Estate, off of White Mountain Estates Road. And it's basically White Mountain Estates. It was just like a subdivision, very tiny, probably about maybe 30 houses, I would guess, in that subdivision.
It's like 6 streets.
Yeah, 6 streets. I mean, not big at all, very tiny. Lindsay had relocated, Karlie's mom, to Yerington, Nevada, approximately 160 miles from Chalfant and Karlie. Wanting to remain close to her friends, Karlie decided to stay with Zach. And despite Lindsay having been granted physical custody of her daughter, she's like, I'm going to stay here with Dad. My friends are here. My life is here. This is where I want to stay. So she ended up staying with her dad. And when Karlie wasn't attending classes at Bishop Union High School, she worked a part-time job at the title company Melissa worked for as an escrow assistant. Those who knew her would describe her as a fun-loving, sweet girl who had a great sense of humor. She would make anybody laugh who was around. She was, despite her, but she was also kind of an introvert. She was very shy and quiet at the same time. But despite all that, she was very popular amongst her classmates and was well liked within the school and community, according to her friends and family. So, she was, for the most part, considering the divorce at such a young age and stuff, she still had a strong relationship with her parents. She still had a strong with the community and her friends. And she, there wasn't any really big sign at first that something was on the horizon was brewing. She just seemed a very well-rounded, normal teenage girl. But then within the 6 months prior to her disappearance, Karlie's behavior, attitude, moods, things, she changed as a person. She went from getting good grades, being attentive, being at school, doing all the things that you're supposed to do, to being kind of what would, being, grades were slipping because she had erratic behavior, bad behavior. She ended up starting to smoke pot. She would show up to class and to school at sometimes high on marijuana. So she went from night and day in personality, and this was happening within the 6 months before she disappeared. So around the time as we got closer and closer to the time she disappeared, Karlie was dealing with the repercussions of having been suspended. She ended up being suspended from school because she would show up high as a kite on marijuana on campus, and they, after it's like, okay, no, we're not doing this. You can't come to school like this, and your grades are plummeting. You're acting out. Your behavior, when she'd be high, she'd be, not violent, but belligerent, and it just wasn't Karlie. And so she got put into a special program to deal with it, and she was also started counseling. For overall the changes, she was actually forced to attend counseling. It wasn't something that she chose. It was a forced or mandated based on her suspension. And being in counseling and actually having someone to talk to kind of helped Karlie. She started to revert back to the Karlie that everybody knew and loved. Her grades started to get better. She stopped doing the marijuana, and she started to come out of this, whatever you want to call it. She started becoming Karlie again. So, it was like a light at the end of the tunnel, and people were like, oh, yay, she's back to being Karlie we know. Or at least that's what people were assuming. Again, there were some clouds looming that people didn't realize that me as a psychologist, a forensic psychologist and a behavioral analyst, have studied her. The reason I studied this case is because of the psychological part of it, which I'll get into later on. But it presents a big factor, and her behaviors leading up to her disappearance may have factored greatly in her disappearance. And, like in the days before she disappeared, her friends and her boyfriend Donald said that she was experiencing episodes of paranoia, erratic mood swings. She was worried that someone was tracking her via her cell phone. You know, and they would, these little episodes would last maybe 5 minutes at most.
Mm.
You know, they weren't long, and they didn't know if she was playing a game, she was joking. But when the more she'd have them, and then she'd have them, you know, they started becoming more and more frequent. And what people didn't know is that she actually had continued to smoke marijuana. She'd go with her boyfriend Donald, and would continue this behavior, which can lead to what's called a drug-induced psychosis, which I'll get into a little bit later. But I think that was what was going on in her, and it's hard to tell sometimes, especially in a person so young. She was 16 years old when she disappeared. Is this hormonal? Is that because the body is right at that time period in a person's life?
Yeah.
They're changing. They're growing up. They're going from a child to a young man or a young woman, and the chemicals in the body are all in a flux. So is this, you know? So it's really hard on a psychological level to diagnose anything or to look at a person and say, oh yeah, you got this or you got that, because of everything that's going on in the body. So, you know, but based on all the pieces of evidence that are in this case, it leads me to that because it's the only thing that really makes sense. And we'll get on to that here in a little bit. But again, like I said, in the days before her disappearance, her friends and boyfriend said that she was experiencing, you know, those episodes. And Melissa and Lindsay and Zach themselves said they did not observe anything, any unusual behavior. They didn't see anything of note. And this is where, you know, some of the, you know, it could have been what's the word I'm looking for, Barb? I'm blanking.
Or prevented or
prevented. It was so.
But, you know, again, they probably, any little blips they thought was just, teenager.
But they didn't say they saw anything. And for me, I'm like, okay, her friends, her boyfriend, and the school psychologist, a licensed professional, told them that she's having these little moments. Apparently she was having a couple of them during some of her sessions. And the psychologist told the parents that, and they kind of just, it's teenage stuff.
Yeah,
and they just kind of blew it
her
off. And I'm like, you know, and that to me, it's like I said, back to us in the beginning, this case was so preventable.
Yeah.
You know, it was so preventable. And, you know, for me, I'm a parent of a 15-year-old son at home. And if his school psychologist or teachers or whoever came to me and said, this is going on, I would immediately take my child to the doctor and say, hey, I have not seen them myself, but his friends, his girlfriend and his teachers or whatever, psychologists have seen this, what's going on? And I would make sure that he was okay. And the fact that they didn't do that, just kind of, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
It's as a parent, it just doesn't register in my head that they didn't do that.
Yeah, too many people have reported where it was just, if it was just one, that person's just sensitive to, doesn't like teenagers.
There was too many that reported it.
Yeah.
And her best friend and her boyfriend told the parents on multiple occasions that she's having these little blips. They don't last very long, but when she's in the middle of them, she's doesn't know who she is. She's paranoid. She's erratic. She's got mood swings. She's going from happy to sad, this and that. And they're not, you know, they contributed it to the marijuana. They contributed it to other things. They didn't take her. And but that's neglect in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, that's your child. You're in charge of taking care of this individual, and people are coming to you with some issues with your child, and you're not doing anything about it. To me, that's almost. You know, I have to be very unbiased in a lot of situations, and this one was hard for me to be unbiased. I'll be very honest, because I am a parent, and I was like so incredulous. Like, why didn't you do that? And I'm like, I can't. And then the other half of me is like, I can't do that because that's just no.
Yeah.
It's hard especially when you're a parent and you see someone you're hurting. So, but yeah, that. It's one of those things. And, as we get into this even deeper, you'll understand why I feel this way and why it's really been a divided case along the way. So as we've established, Karlie started having these little episodes of paranoia, and her friends and psychologists and everybody had been informed, and nothing was done. So then on the evening of October the 12th, 2018, Karlie asked Melissa if she could go to a local football game at the high school. Unfortunately, she was actually planning on going to a house party with her boyfriend, Donald Arrowood. But unaware that it was her daughter's true intentions, Melissa did say, "Oh yeah, sure, go. It's normal, high school thing. You're going to a football game. Go, have a good time." About 8 o'clock, Melissa called Karlie and asked if she needed a ride home. Because again, this is 20 miles from where they live. Hey, I'm heading that way. Do you need a ride since I'm still, in town? And Karlie assured Melissa, her stepmom, no, I'm fine. Donald will take me home. Not a big deal. So Melissa's like, okay, we'll see you at home. And she headed home to their home 15 miles away. And meanwhile, Karlie and Donald went to this house party where she was not supposed to be because of the suspension and the counseling and things like that. She was not allowed to be at places or events like that. At 8 o'clock, her mom, Melissa called, said, hey, do you need a ride? She said no. She went home. And Karlie went to the party again. She wasn't supposed to attend this party, but, teenagers are going to be teenagers and they're going to do what they're not supposed to do. And she went, and, the events after that phone call were information that was basically gotten from Karlie's friends, the people who attended the party, and Karlie's parents, Melissa and Zach. But according to the party people that were at the party, and Donald had said that it really wasn't a party per se. It was more just like a gathering of maybe a handful of people. So, but either way, they were there and they were smoking marijuana and probably drinking and doing things that they really shouldn't have been doing. But, again, teenagers are going to be teenagers. And according to these attendees, Karlie began to panic, act extremely paranoid, became frantic, did not know who they were. Mm-hmm. She'd go in and out of clarity. She'd go, one minute she knew who they were, the next minute she didn't. She was thinking that someone was out to kill her, and it was just this huge manic episode. And they also were saying that she was not able to be consoled in any way, shape, or form. I mean, you couldn't comfort her and say, well, she didn't want to be touched. The next minute she wanted to be hugged, and then she pushed you away, and she wasn't definitely not in her right mind. She was absent for all intents and purposes. At 8:30, she did call Melissa, and probably one of those moments of clarity, and asked to be picked up from a trailer park where the party was being held, saying, and this is what Melissa quoted, what Karlie said. She said, "Never mind, hurry up, I changed my mind, come get me. I'm booking it down Dixon Lane, hurry, I'm scared." Extremely worried, Melissa drove to the area, noting that Karlie hadn't wanted to get off the phone with her. They were on the phone the entire time, and according to Melissa, you could hear the panic in Karlie's voice. It sounded like someone was going to kill her. She was scared. She was running. She was terrified. It was, it's hard for when you're not there listening to it. It sounded as if somebody was after her when there was nobody after her. But she didn't get off the phone. These were all very uncharacteristics of Karlie. This was not Karlie. And was adamant. That was the other thing. She was extremely adamant about that. How do you picked up now? Hurry, get here. She wanted to be picked up. She wanted to get out of this area now. She was in danger. She was going to get killed, whatever. And, Melissa finally did arrive at the trailer park and found that her stepdaughter was nowhere to be found. And I was like, she's searching the area. And as she's searching the area on one of the roads, she sees this little light flashing up and down. It was actually Karlie. She had used her flashlight on her phone to guide her way. And it was about almost a mile away from where she had been, from where the party was, running down the street. Like I said, she was using her cell phone to guide her. When Melissa spotted her, she jumped into the car and she was extremely scared. Her eyes were completely dilated. And the emotion that she was feeling was echoed in her face. You could see the panic and the fear and the terror in her face, which Melissa has described as having a ghost-like appearance. Like if you've seen a ghost or you're totally freaked out, that's what she looked like. And I mean, it was dilated eyes, pale skin, sweating, out of breath, panicked. I mean,
and she just dived into the back seat. So, yeah. So it's like that alone is different too.
Yeah, she just totally not her. And then, Melissa ended up starting to drive her home. And throughout the drive home, Karlie would vocalize her fear of the car would kill her. She would change seats multiple times while she was in the car. And if Melissa would speed up a certain speed, she's like, "Oh, you're going to kill me, you're going to kill me." And she'd freak out. I mean, it was just like she could not, she was so erratic. She couldn't sit still. She kept on saying that the speed of the car itself was going to kill her. People were out going to kill her. Someone was listening to her cell phone. She was terrified of her cell phone. I mean, it was just complete and utter paranoia to the point of literally she was definitely, without a doubt, 100% not in a state of mind. Any sort. No rationale, no cognitive, nothing. It was what a lot of people in the psychology world call fight or flight. And that's where she was. It was either you fight it or you flight it.
Yeah.
You run. And she was in the run. She was running. And so by the time they made it back to the house, Zach had made it home around the same time, or maybe he'd been home a little bit beforehand. He had picked up a couple of beers and was chilling out when Karlie and Melissa made it home. According to both he and Melissa, Karlie was still acting erratically, huddling frantically in a corner, mumbling to herself. And then she'd stay there for a few minutes, and she'd go to another corner. And then she'd go to the couch. And she was bouncing around. She couldn't, and she was shaking. It was almost like she was vibrating. She just couldn't. And I was like, okay, what's going on? I'm trying to calm her down. I'm trying to talk to her. She panicked. She was panicked and paranoid, and unable to, like I said, to stay in one spot for a few minutes. She also didn't even recognize her own dad. She had no idea who her dad was. She was freaked out when her dad walked into the room. She was like, "Who are you?" Including her little brothers and her other older brother. She didn't know who anybody was. And she would have little blips and moments of clarity where she knew who Melissa was. And it was just brief moments. It wasn't like, she knew who Melissa was the whole time. She didn't. It was just like maybe 10 seconds here, maybe another 20 here. For the most part, she had no cognitive ability to understand who was around her. Or where she was, that she was safe. In her mind, nowhere was safe. She was that panicked and that paranoid, according to Melissa and to Zach. And like I said, she was unable to stay for more than a few minutes. She was particularly afraid of her cell phone and of her parents getting too close to her. When they had asked her what was wrong, she was unable to tell them. She didn't know herself. And they would try to calm Karlie down. And Melissa tried to get her to eat something. She tried to serve her a salad, which she referred to the lettuce in the salad as the devil's lettuce. While her frantic behavior had died down a little bit, she's still very anxious, disoriented, paranoid, panicked. There was still that in there. She eventually admitted to having smoked weed while at the party. This led to Zachary to believe that maybe she had an adverse reaction to the drug, as she hadn't smoked, in his knowledge, hadn't smoked in a while, or that something might have been laced inside of it other than the marijuana. Because I know sometimes you hear, oh, it's marijuana and has like crystal meth in it or something, whatever. So you never know. And so that's what he thought, that maybe she was having a bad reaction. But both he and Melissa felt that she wasn't in immediate danger and did not drive her to the hospital. Which in my opinion, and not just my opinion, but many people's opinion, was their biggest mistake in this whole thing. Yeah. Because, again, this is where I go, this was preventable. Yeah. And I'm putting that with the exclamation point because I am a parent, and I don't care who you are. I don't care how far you are from a hospital. I know they lived out in the middle of nowhere, but if your child is acting like that, where they're bouncing from a corner, left, right, da-da-da.
And they don't know you?
They don't know you. They don't know what's going on. They're saying that someone's out to kill them. I would immediately take my kid to the hospital because something is wrong. And considering that they had the notice prior that she was having these episodes, even if they lasted just a few minutes, I would immediately have taken my kid to the hospital.
This is obviously ramped up.
Yeah, something's wrong. This is not normal. And if it is a drug reaction, sometimes those drug reactions can be deadly. And if not treated, you don't know what's causing this. And to let them think, oh, she'll just sleep it off, that was irresponsible of both parents.
Yeah.
And they and themselves have said that's their biggest regret that they didn't do that. And that's why it was preventable. Had they done that and taken her to the hospital as they should have, Karlie probably would not be missing. I mean, she wouldn't be. It just, this is the part of the case that just, it's one of those cases where I just want to, shake somebody. Like, why didn't you do this? It's just something that was so simple and so preventable. And the fact that they didn't do that, Karlie's not here.
And plus, if she was having, if anything was beyond the marijuana itself, if the hospital could observe her behavior, to determine what it is, and they would have to see it.
Yeah. And I'm not getting into a little bit here in a little bit, but the behaviors that she was sustaining, that she was showing, are classic signs of a drug-induced psychosis. I mean, it is textbook. I mean, it literally is. When I was looking into it, I was like, I knew, because I have taken so much psychology over the years. I got a master's degree in psychology. And I was like, I know this sounds familiar to me. And I just, again, there are so many different psychological cases out there for different things. And when I started doing research, it all came back to drug-induced psychosis. And I'll go into more about what that is here in a little bit. But I fully 100% believe that's what she was going through. And when you are in a psychosis like that, you need medical help. It will only get worse. You'll have amnesia. You got to be medically treated. And she was in a full-fledged episode that was not going to recede. Unlike the other ones, it lasted just a few minutes. It was ramping up to this full-blown psychosis. Now she was in it, which is what I truly believe. And she didn't get help, and she didn't know who she was. She was in the fight or flight mode. And in a person with a state of psychosis, when they're dealing with amnesia and things like that, that is dangerous to leave them alone and unattended, and for her to take off like that. Also, I wanted to mention, people are like, well, why didn't, when she took off and left the house after the party, she wasn't alone. Donald actually went with her, and, he was worried and concerned. He actually watched her walk down the road. He stood there watching her.
He tried to hug her to calm her down, and for a split second she did. She relaxed into the hug. Then she pushed him. She bit him, and then pushed him away and just started running. And he just didn't know what to do. If he tried to chase her, it would make it worse. So he just stood there in the middle of the street and watched her, just to keep an eye on her until her mom could catch her.
Yeah. So, which is also very much a part of drug-induced, because you have, when you look at in drug-induced psychosis, it's kind of like a wave. Yeah. You have the high and lows of it, and there are lows you can calm. It's almost what I call moments of clarity, where she can calm down a little bit, and then it wraps right back up. Calm down, wraps right back up, and it fits the swings that she was having. The fact that she was, as the night progressed, her memory was getting worse and worse. She didn't remember. She was doodling on things, and she just was not her. She, devil's lettuce, she wouldn't want to eat. She would drink some water, but then she thought the water was contaminated. I mean, it was just weird.
Yeah.
Everything was, and this is going to sound bad, but it was very reminiscent of somebody who had schizophrenia, and everything was a conspiracy theory. There's poison in our water, that there's listening on our phone, somebody was going to kill me. It was very much reminiscent of that, which is very reminiscent of schizophrenia, which can make an appearance, unfortunately, at 16 years of age. It's about when it starts, and that may be what triggered it. She may be having those little blips, and then the drug use just triggered into it. I don't know. I don't have her medical records. I'm not a medical person. I am a psychologist, but not a medical person. But based on the information and knowledge that I have, that's what it chose to me. And again, Melissa and Zach not taking her to the hospital was their biggest mistake. I mean, that's the one thing that is everybody on both sides agree on is why didn't you take her? And it just was, it's one of those things that's like, where was your common sense? I mean, I don't know how you feel about.
No, that's it. That should have been the first thing, just because that's not something you sleep off when you don't recognize your own father and all this other. That's.
So you wouldn't do that. If someone, like one of your friends or something like that came up to you and was acting cuckoo, you'd probably take them to the hospital, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah. I'd have to get help to do it. But to try to push them in the car and take them to the hospital, but definitely call somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that should have been the first thing.
And that's the, like I said, is the one thing in this case that I can't get my head around. And unfortunately, because they didn't do that, it leads to speculation, and it led down a very dark path that I don't think they understood or needed to even go down.
Yeah.
Had they done that. And it's those little things that we do in our lives that we should go back and change. And this is probably one of the ones they wish they could go.
Yeah.
So after the dinner, after Melissa had made dinner for Karlie and the family, Melissa and Karlie ventured into Karlie's room where Melissa continued to try to calm Karlie down, and she was trying to like rub her feet, paint her toenails, maybe color a little bit, read from the Bible, trying probably in vain to calm Karlie down or to get her to focus. But all the while, Karlie still was acting extremely erratic, paranoid, acting very much out of the ordinary. Just didn't want to touch her cell phone, didn't want, anybody really touching her. It was just, she was just kind of sat in a little ball in the corner of her bed. And, Melissa was calmly trying to calm her down. Melissa took out her cell phone and hit the video button on her phone and slipped it in her pocket, and to record about 8 minutes and 45 seconds worth of an audio thing to play for Karlie, showing this is why you don't do drugs, this is how you sound. And I get that as a parent. I probably may do the same thing if my kid were doing that. Like, hey, it's what you look like. This is why you don't do that stuff. But basically, the intention of showing, that was their intention, was to show.
Well, yeah. I had a friend who tried to record her son when he came home drunk.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he was maintaining such dignity. No.
I can only imagine.
He thought he was fooling everybody, but they played that for him, and he was so embarrassed. He thought sure he fooled him, and that's what they were intending with this. But this was way too far gone to. That was not a simple thing like that.
No, this was where she needed to be taken to the hospital.
Yeah.
Not because we listen, you can actually hear the audio on the People Investigates true crime show that's actually on Investigative Discovery through Discovery Plus. You can actually watch it. And or I think it's on Peacock as well, I think.
Yeah.
But you can hear it. You can actually hear the audio recording, and you hear how she's talking. And I'm like, why would you not take? You hear it just again, going back to it again. And I'm probably going to repeat myself doing this because it just boggles my mind as not only a parent but as a professional. Why didn't you do this?
Yeah.
You hear your daughter talking the way she's talking, interacting the way she's interacting, not knowing who you are, and you don't do anything. It's like it's one of those moments in your life you just get so irritated with somebody. Why did you do that?
And back to the devil's lettuce. She asked her, why were you calling it devil's lettuce? She says, my head is filled with all these devil images. that should be
a hint.
a hint.
Hello, 4x4. That's what I'm saying. Is there were so many hints that these parents were given.
Yeah.
And the fact that they just blew them off. And that was the other thing that always bothered me in this one as well, is Melissa did take the time to care for Karlie and trying to calm her down. But Zach was very nonchalant about the whole thing. And that bothers me. I could rule out very easily, maybe, her mom didn't do anything or her biological mom didn't do anything, but I could never rule out her dad. Her dad's behavior, the whole gambit, has always bothered me.
Yeah, he'd only had a few beers, but he just wandered off and went to bed. I guess maybe he should have been worried that his daughter didn't recognize him and panicked at the sight of him or something. Well, and so he just gave up and went to bed.
Yeah. Well, which is bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Like your child is not being them, and you're just
he wasn't.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't think he was that drunk.
Well, and I actually spoke to other fathers. So I thought, well, maybe it's just a father thing, because a lot of times in true crime
let
shows,
the women folk take care of the problem kids or something.
Yeah, or like a lot of times you hear all these like true crime stories, and the news media always wants to talk to the mom and not the dad.
Yeah.
And next time's case you'll understand it completely. But when I talked to other fathers, when I was doing research for this episode, all of them were like, yeah, it was my kid. I would be, even if she may not want me in the room, I'd be outside the door. I'd be peeking in like every 5 minutes. Is it okay? And I would be getting help. Well, I wouldn't be just nonchalant, like, whatever, I'm going to bed. And, it's like you didn't have a care in the world. I'm like, your child is in trouble, and you're like, I thought he was hot. She was hot. And she'd just sleep it off and things would be okay. And I'm like, she didn't recognize you. I mean, that just, I can't, it's one of the things I just cannot get my hands on.
And most people know that is not the normal behavior of somebody who's just been smoking pot.
Right, yeah.
They're usually laid back and hungry.
Well, and I'll be honest, I have smoked pot, not a lot. I've done it maybe twice in my life. But I remembered the people who were around me, and I didn't get frantic and paranoid and things like that. I was hungry.
See?
But so it just, the whole situation boggles me, and he bothers me. Because his attitude.
Because if you thought that it was laced with something, then you'd want to get her to the hospital to find out what is it. That this is an unknown substance. Exactly. What's going on?
Exactly. And he didn't do that. And it just, I saw many interviews that he's done, and there are moments where he does seem emotionally upset that his daughter's missing, and he's concerned and worried. But then the next interview he does, like a day or two later, he is this like laid back, kind of, dude, not caring in the world. It's just like...
Oh, another interview,
Yeah. Telling the story and having no afflection, no reflection, or emotion inside. Nothing. It's just kind of just sitting there like a bump on a log. And I'm like, your daughter is missing.
Yeah.
And this one is very affected to me, as you can tell, because I am a parent. And a psychologist, and I'm like, this just doesn't fit. It's like, hello? Anybody there? They didn't do that. But as she's recording this video, it's in her pocket, and she's recording this, so, Karlie can play it for Karlie. Karlie can be heard saying she didn't want to go to sleep in case she was killed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And then she also was asking Melissa if she would call 911 if something had happened to her. And that's where a lot of people end up hearing, is just that section. But then there's another section that wasn't played until later on, where you do actually hear Karlie asking for Melissa to call 911 or take her to the hospital. And it goes ignored. Which another part of me is like, your child now is asking to be taken to the ER, to a doctor, and you're ignoring it. What?
Yeah.
You just kind of sit there going like, and you want me to be able to support you when it just, I can't get get my head around it, and it's just so frustrating to me. There's words I want to use, but I can't use them. But yeah, something happened to her. After the video was recorded, the pair did spend some time chatting about this and that. So between 10:30 p.m. and 3 a.m., they were chatting, and she was trying to get information out of Karlie, and most of it was erratic, and Karlie was doodling something on a white piece of paper, and she was very absent. It was more, she was there physically, but definitely not there mentally.
Yeah.
And she was just kind of doodling and looking up and kind of doing, almost like a panicky, almost like if someone's writing their last will and test or something happens to me, this is what's going to, that's kind of what it appeared to be, or appeared to look like. The next morning, the family's movements on October the 13th, 2018, have been placed under extreme intense scrutiny. After Melissa had admitted to Dateline NBC, she did go on, after Karlie disappeared, she did go on Dateline against the authorities' wishes. And not only did she go on there, she fabricated a lot of what she said on there, which gave her basically a massive target on her back. It's like, okay, not only is your daughter missing, you're lying about it.
Yeah, it was one part I read where she was, she thought it should be okay because I want to get the word out and all that. And then at the last second, she goes, but I'm not supposed to talk about this, or I'm not supposed to reveal. So she was changing what she thought was unimportant details and then that just blew up in her face.
And I'm going to say this, for all the parents out there who have got a missing child or missing person in their life, there is not a handbook out there.
Yeah.
That's why, the Polly Klaas Foundation exists. That's why the Morgan Nick exists. That's why you can contact the Missing and Exploited Children Foundation. And they can give you the help and the tools necessary.
The guidance.
And the guidance necessary. Getting the posters out. When is, the police do want you to eventually talk to the media. That is something they do want. But there is a time frame in which to do that. And they didn't follow that. And also, for those of you out there who don't who in the world of law enforcement, they keep certain details back from the media. So that way, if they do find a body, they do find a suspect, and they're doing an interrogation, they can say, tell me about what you did to her or what you did to him, and certain details that are left out, they can say, well, how'd you kill him? Well, I stabbed him. Well, no, you didn't, because the guy died being shot in the head. That rolls the guy out. So they keep certain things back. And so when you don't know that, and you go on to something like Dateline, which is a national program, and you start saying that stuff, you could be saying things that the police are intentionally wanting to keep back for that purpose if they did find out that she was killed. But they didn't do that. They just, But she went on, Melissa, replaced her, as I said, that whole morning was placed under intense scrutiny. She admitted on Dateline, NBC, and Dr. Phil that she had lied about her initial actions. Initially, she said that she had gone about her usual routine, waking up about 5:45 a.m., getting the kids ready for school. However, when she opened Karlie's door, she found that she was not in bed and that Zachary had seen her all morning. But the actual events that actually happened was that at 5:48 a.m., Melissa woke briefly to see Karlie was lying awake next to her and fell back to sleep. So then between about 7:15, 7:30, she woke to find that Karlie was gone and the front door was slightly ajar. Worried, by then she went and woke up Zach, saying, hey, where's Karlie? And Zach was like, well, check the boys' room, because sometimes they'd all crawl into bed together, and she wasn't there. She was nowhere to be found in the house. So worried, she and Zach spent 2 hours driving around White Mountain Estates and the surrounding desert, which, again, Barb will go into how big this place is and how empty it is here in a little bit, thinking Karlie had simply gone for a walk. So they went to go look for her. And they were unable to look. They couldn't find her anywhere. And which, in itself, you'll understand why that's bizarre. but they couldn't find her anywhere. And Zachary called Lindsay in Nevada, who in turn told him to contact the authorities. Zach at first didn't want to contact. Oh, she'll turn out maybe she just went for a walk. And Lindsay actually had to almost force Zach to call the authorities. I'm like, oh my God, dude. First, you don't take your kid to the hospital, and now your kid's missing. You can't find her. She's under the, not acting normally, and she's now missing, and you don't want to call the authorities?
Yeah.
There's moments you just want to take somebody and smack them upside the head. And I want to. And that sounds really bad, but it's so frustrating to me. It's like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
That's just the problem is he probably wasn't thinking. But he did finally, about 9:35 a.m., he finally did call. With no immediate indication of abduction or physical description of vehicle, they could not do an Amber Alert. No Amber Alert was sent out in regards to Karlie's disappearance. But due to the remote area of Chalfant and limited resources available to the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, the FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were brought in to assist in working the case. They were looking at scenes, they were doing searches, they were talking to people, canvassing the neighborhood. It was, when the investigators did visit the home, there was no forced entry, obviously. Karlie had left behind all of her personal belongings, including her cell phone, money, cards, anything she had. Her glasses that she needed to see, she had, she couldn't see without her glasses. So she's, who knows where, and has no glasses. Again, in money, the FBI combed her cell phone and social media accounts and found a text to her boyfriend, which she indicated she believed that the weed she smoked at the party had been laced with something else because she just couldn't calm herself down. It was like almost, for those of you who know about drugs, it's like permanently being on speed, can't slow down. But this led to them to believe that she could still be feeling the effects of the drug when she went missing. And again, if she is in a drug-induced psychosis, which I fully believe is what was going on, she was in trouble. She had probably had a high and was like, okay, fight or flight, and she took off. She probably woke up, looked around, didn't know where she was, and ran out the door. Melissa woke up, she wasn't there, door was open, police were called, and the search begins. So after she disappeared, and the investigation starts, and the police, authorities, and FBI, and the missing and exploited children, were all brought in, they found some witnesses that had seen her. One, 3, possibly 4 witnesses that saw her. The neighbor and a retired motorcycle officer with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office recalled seeing a thin female with long hair walk by his house on Ponderosa Street. We basically their next door neighbor, kind of near the corner. She was walking down the street with a piece of paper in her hand, wearing gray sweatpants, white tennis shoes, and a white t-shirt. Another neighbor who lives down the street on White Mountain Estates Road, west of Ponderosa, claims to have seen Karlie also during this time, also with paper in her hand. And finally, a third witness who was cutting firewood farther down White Mountain Estates Road saw a girl fitting Karlie's description in the vicinity of U.S. Highway 6, standing behind a barbed wire fence. As such, the investigators were determined she was likely last seen walking south towards the highway, approximately 30 yards east of it and 100 yards south of Sierra View Road. And the thing that, the time frame in which the times that these witnesses have said that they saw her, there's one that saw her at this time, and there was another about 7:15. And then one saw her at 7:20. And then the other one, the one that's cutting wood, said that he saw her at that corner of Highway 6 and White Mountain Road at 7:30. And I'm like,
that point is a mile from her house.
Yeah, no. I said, there is no way,
in
her state of mind, that she could walk from where she was seen supposedly at 7:20 to Highway 6 in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless she's at a full blade run, maybe. But So the timeline has been skewed, and that was something that I noticed. And I actually called Mono County and said, "Hey, you might want to look at your timeline." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I pointed out the timestamps, and I said, "I don't know about you, but that's a distance to make in 5 minutes." And he's like, "You're right. Something's not right." So they had to go back and look at their own timestamps because things just didn't add up. I have yet to hear what they've uncovered with that, but yeah, that was, a little discrepancy in there, which also leads to, okay, is somebody saying something, covering for something? I mean, there's so many different theories and conspiracy stuff that you can look at when it comes to that.
Yeah, and they were saying she was just kind of moseying along, looking up at the sky, carrying the white piece of paper, and that was confirmed with three different witnesses. But she was just walking along, so it wasn't like she was running.
It looked very much like when you see a person who has Alzheimer's disease walking and just kind of muttering and just, looking around, having no idea of where they are. And that's when I think she was pretty much in what I call a psych break, where she just was out of her mind, didn't know who she was, didn't know where she was going. She was just wandering aimlessly wherever she led. And unfortunately, that is what happens sometimes with drug-induced psychosis and even early signs of schizophrenia. So, it concerns me. Some of the online sleuths have been really big with this case. They've been, a lot of comments, both negative and positive, both, and Barb will get into that in a little bit, how they've affected this case. But some online sleuths have speculated that the girl seen by these witnesses was in fact Melissa and not Karlie. I actually initially thought the same thing because of the situation. And, if she did die of that drug overdose, if it in fact was an overdose or something, and she did die in the bed, and they're panicked and they're trying to,
cover it up, that might be, well, they just saw her walking down the road. Is it a possibility? Yeah. Is it? Kind of reaching.
It's reaching, but I can't discord it. They could have gotten...
Definitely or would not, if anybody knew Karlie, like a neighbor who would recognize as the teenage daughter, would not mistake them because she was very slim and tall.
But it was also said that, it could have been like the niece of one of the, I think it was like Melissa's niece or Zach's niece, one of the nieces or something who looked like Karlie could have filled in. Who knows? But there's been no evidence found to substantiate these claims. And there are no security cameras on the exterior of the home, nor are there any gas stations or any other markers in the vicinity that have their own cameras. There's nothing there. It's empty. A family friend has shared that Karlie has never given any indication that she wanted to run away or that she was involved in anything sinister. So it's just like, okay. She just went, poof, gone. And, it's... everyone speculates and stuff, but when you understand where this is taking place, you'll understand why both Barbara and I and everybody else in the world is like, where did she go?
Yeah.
Because there was nowhere to go. But after a week-long search, they searched the entire area, whole surrounding area. It was conducted by the sheriff's office, involving helicopters, searchers on horseback, off-board vehicles, cadaver dogs. A total of 60 police personnel were involved and were aided by search and rescue teams who helped calm the surrounding area and Bishop. They were looking everywhere and searching everything. And because they were out so remote area, there are a lot of wild animals out there, like coyotes and probably snakes. I don't know what, you're from California. Yeah. What kind of animals?
Depends on where you are, but you could be, they're close enough to mountains that there are mountain lions if you went that way.
Mountain lions, thank you.
It's all desert except one side there's mountains behind them.
So there's some speculation that maybe she was taken by wild animals. She wandered out there and passed out because of the psychosis or the drugs and stuff, and was eaten by animals. There is that theory. But on October 25th, the efforts were officially suspended, and that did not stop private search parties from setting out on search of the high desert and the White Mountains. Throughout the course of the searches, Melissa would provide live stream updates via Facebook. Unfortunately, again, the videos really made her look guilty or deceptive. And yes, I understand that she was trying to get the story of Karlie out there, and I understand that, respect that. But I will be very honest. When I very first viewed those videos, I was like, wow, man, this was deceptive. She's holding back something. She knows something. She's lying. I mean, it was just, that was the initial reaction that I had. And then when I stopped, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to rewatch these after Barbara and I actually got into an argument over it, much to my husband's chagrin, because he had to witness it. But I went back and I actually looked at them from a different perspective. I stopped listening to what she was saying and just watched her body language, which is something that I have been trained to do, and I should have known better, and I should have done it to begin with. And I saw what we would call flags or blips in her physical behavior that led me to believe that she was, of course, terrified. Her daughter's missing, but that she probably does know something, or maybe knows something, or speculates something's going on. She may, Zach, unfortunately, I'll get into this in a little bit, was known to be a very violent man when he drank. That was the main reason for the breakup of his first marriage, and he would do that in this marriage as well. And so there was some speculation that when Karlie came home in this state, and with Zach that had been drinking, that he did something to hurt Karlie, and that she didn't know about it because maybe Karlie had gotten up in the night or something when she had passed out after 3 a.m. and woke up Zach, and Zach did something to her, and speculated that maybe on accident, was trying to discipline her or something. We don't know. This is just complete speculation, but that's what she appeared when she was doing this Facebook videos, was that she was panicked. She was scared. It was like she almost knew something, or was afraid to believe in something that she thought may have happened. I mean, there was just these pieces that, but however, I get that she wanted to get her story out there, but she needed to do it when she was calmer, not so panicked, not so fly by the night, very erratic behavior in a lot of these videos, out of breath, sweating, panicked. It did not do anything to help Karlie's case at all. It made her, if anything, it made her look more guilty, and that she knew something. So, and it's so hard, like, again, with social media today, it's so speculatory. I mean, it's give or take, yes or no. I mean, it's no gray anymore. It's all black and white.
Oh yeah, and then you get the ones who are these this ones that were leaning towards the conspiracy stuff. They're starting to examine everything in the video, in the background and stuff.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah.
And she was like drinking something. Oh, she's probably drinking alcohol. I think that was one of the comments too, because you see her drinking, I think it was a glass of water or something. Yeah. And she's probably drinking vodka or something, and she's drunk.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, in today's world, in social media, that unfortunately happens.
Yeah.
So again, if you going out there, if you do, and sadly enough, if you are involved in a missing person case, and someone you know and love is missing, please contact the foundations to get help. Don't do this on your own, because sometimes when you're trying to help, you can be hindering the case even worse. So, I can't say live and learn, because, but please do that. So, but anyways, unfortunately, her Facebook videos did make her look guilty and deceptive. And then in addition to what happened on Dateline, it just kind of boosted that. So it was just a bad situation. Posters with Karlie's image and description were put in grocery stores, gas stations, on light posts, in diners across Eastern California. I mean, they were everywhere, even into Nevada, into Tonopah, which was about 100 and some miles right out northeast of where they are. So they posted them everywhere. A week after she went missing, the sheriff's office set up a checkpoint along Highway 6. And while 50 people shared they'd driven through the area on October 13th, none recall seeing anyone matching the descriptions of walking along the road. I mean, it's like literally, in other words, they had people like, hey, if you know anything, did you see anybody walking from this point or this point on this road, basically Highway 6 at this time on this day, and nobody saw her.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, you'd think that if she did wander away when was walking, somebody would have seen her. And yeah, there's not a lot of traffic really on that road at certain times of day. This was again early morning, so you'd think there'd be a little bit more traffic, people going to work, truck drivers, things like that. So it was, the fact she wasn't seen, it's like, okay, did she leave the area? Did something else happen to her? Was she take? There are 30, 40 homes there. Did somebody in one of those homes take her? But they did canvass all the homes, and she appeared not to be in any of those homes. So it's, it's a challenge to figure out where she went. She just literally disappeared in the middle of nowhere, and that's what makes this case just even more baffling. One, because it was preventable, but on the other hand,
yeah,
because of where it's at, and Barb will go in here in just a second about it, because it is literally in the middle of nowhere, and she has literally disappeared, and nobody saw her anywhere. I mean, it's just like she was on that corner, and then was gone. If that truly was her on that corner, which I would assume it would be her, unless it was somebody, posing as her. I mean, there's still, and then I can't, as a, I don't think so, but as a person who used to work for DPS.
There was also nobody reported walking back the other way. If it was somebody posing her, they would be going back to the house.
Yeah. Possibly, but that was the other thing. As she was walking down that road, her scent, when the dogs, they had the scent dogs out there, they tracked her scent about 100 yards off the road, and it just stopped. And that to me means that someone picked her up, or, because your scent just doesn't stop like that.
Yeah.
So, which also leads me to believe that maybe either someone picked her up and took her, or that and I can't rule it out because of the situation, where it's at. I can't rule it out that, it could have been somebody else dressed as Karlie, and that they picked her up and took her. I can't, as an investigator, as a person who does forensic psychology, that's something I just can't rule out.
Yeah.
I can't. Even though it does seem improbable, it's not impossible. And it just, I can't rule, and even the police, we can't rule it out. We don't have the evidence to support it, but at the same time, we don't have the evidence not to support it. Because of where the scent ended like that, because of where she was last seen, and nobody else saw her, it just leaves something's amiss.
Yeah.
So, who knows? So yeah, as we were saying a few minutes ago, this is literally in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, and there are wild animals like coyotes and mountain lions. And there was some speculation that if she had wandered out into the desert, that she had collapsed or whatever, and that one of the wild animals had gotten her and had eaten her. And to boost that, in December of 2018, bloody underwear was found near some coyote scat. It was collected for testing, but it had not been sent to the right facility. It was instead delivered to the California Department of Justice. The sheriff's office has since stated that they do not believe that the underwear was linked to the Karlie case. Police have said that the rural area and desert of this case has made this a very unique challenge, and one that is unprecedented in a lot of their situation for a missing person in this area. And Barb over here, she actually grew up in California. She lived in California. So she has a familiarity with the area and probably gives more. And I wanted to have her give us some insight about the area because she grew up there and she knows the area. So because this area is the area that Karlie lived is such a factor in her case, I wanted to be able to give you guys out there. We both did. An idea of where this is and why, because I've said, we both have said it many times, it's in the middle of nowhere, and people say that, but I wanted to get you guys to really understand that it really is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So Barb, take it away.
Okay. California, the state of California is a little over 1,000 miles long and 560 miles at its widest. I'm from about 30 miles east of LA and was really surprised when looking at a map and realizing where Bishop actually was. More than out there somewhere, which is what a lot of the desert towns are. But it's actually straight east of San Francisco, which is, California, and yet San Francisco is way up here, LA's down here. Bishop is just straight across from there, but straight north of LA because of the curvature of California. So it was really surprising. But it's about a 4-hour drive nonstop from LA to Bishop. And it's on the far side of a mountain range, the Sierra Nevada mountain range that runs nearly the whole length of California. So that I hadn't been to Bishop, but I've been to the desert areas that are south of that, and so you know what they look like. And I was looking at all these things on the maps and stuff. But Karlie Guse lived in the high desert, so it was nicer weather than Death Valley, 163 miles south. But it's still empty and flat on 3 sides. There was a mountain range, a smaller mountain range behind her neighborhood. So that's where but it was far enough away she wouldn't be able to walk to that. But
going back to the weather thing, yeah, it was nice earlier, but a lot of people don't understand in the desert, in the day it can be really hot, but at night when that sun goes down, it can get bitterly cold.
Yeah, and that comes out here too. Her tiny remote neighborhood consisted of just 6 streets, about a mile from Highway 6. Highway 6, it ran north, and then after it goes up, it runs across, all the way across the United States. It is a major highway. It's just remote in that area. But it's 10 miles north of Bishop, the nearest actual town where all the kids attended school. The Chalfant is about 3.5 miles north, and it's an unincorporated town. It has the larger neighborhoods, some small businesses. There's even a tourist 50s themed diner called Flo's Diner. But they have there's no local elected government, and they rely on the county for services and law enforcement. Everything else is in Bishop, which is, like I said, 10 miles down. That's where, living in the tiny white mountain estates, which is where their neighborhood, she was 10 miles from all of her friends. Not easy for a popular high school girl. The idea that she just wandered away in the early morning hours could only mean that she was clearly not in her right mind, especially since 3 witnesses saw her wearing a white t-shirt, gray sweatpants in 40-degree weather. That's what it was when she left her home. And she left her home, her phone and glasses at home. If she had wandered farther along Highway 6, which is where she was last seen, she would have been noticed by drivers. Many truckers have regular routes that you see the same trucks, many times during the week. My dad did. He drove for Cool Fuel and would pick up his truck at dark early in the morning on Monday morning and drive from LA to Tonopah, Nevada several times a week, coming home around Thursday or Friday. I grew up hearing of these places. The Grapevine, which is the famous pass through the mountains on Highway 5. And up here, Ridgecrest, Big Pine, Bishop, Tonopah on the other route. Back before cell phones, you're on these roads. When they say middle of nowhere, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. No gas stations.
Miles.
Yeah, for as far as you can see, there's nothing. It's just tumbleweeds and brush. It's not like around here, from Austin to Buda. It used to be a lot of empty between it, and it's grown up. Now you've got gas stations and everything like that. And it's still, people call it the middle of nowhere. This is the middle of nowhere. But back before cell phones, the truckers with their CB radios were your lifeline. If you broke down on one of those roads, that there's nothing for miles, you wouldn't be able to walk to a gas station. It was too far. Those stretches of empty roads between towns. Karlie left without her phone, so she would be just as vulnerable, especially walking. Those truckers were the eyes and ears of local rescuers who also had CB radios in their offices. And, truckers say, "Hey, Smokey, got your ears on. Got a stranded car at my location, stand by for info." And they would let them know, and then they could come out because they couldn't patrol that many miles of empty. My dad was typically one of those knights in a shiny tanker that he'd tell stories about people he'd stopped and helped, or just the rescues, stuff like that. And it's just, there's nothing there. So I can't imagine her. But I still think she was picked up if she got that far.
If she did, yeah. Because it's literally a mountain on one side, mountain on the other side, and there's like maybe 100 miles in between, and it's nothing. I mean, it's like flat, brush, tumbleweed.
Yeah.
Like she was saying, nothing.
Nothing.
There's nothing there.
It's not like it's just a dusty little town or something like that, like these little country towns out here. No, nothing. Mm-mm. So, yeah.
So that's what makes this, and that's what makes this unique and frustrating for the police, because it is in the middle of nowhere, because there is nothing out there. She just couldn't just wander away. There's nowhere for her to wander to, except out in the desert where she could have collapsed and died. But they searched thoroughly. They would have found something, article of clothing, something that would say, okay, yeah, this is where Karlie dropped. Bones. They didn't find anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, when her parents went and searched that morning, Zach said he drove up towards the mountain where it's higher ground. So because then you could see all over their area.
See if you could see her.
See if maybe you could see her. Yeah, because she'd stand out, one person walking along vertically, with all that just low sagebrush.
Yeah, but again,
nothing.
And as you can see from what Barbara described, it's empty and desolate out there. Really nothing and nowhere for her to go. Yeah. And that's what makes this case even more baffling and mysterious. Where did she disappear to? How did she disappear? It leaves a lot of questions that haven't been answered. Everyone asks that question. Is like, where did she go? How did she go? And at that time of day, they actually had a police officer at the corner of Highway 6 and White Mountain Road, or Ranch Road there, and he was timing at that time of day, from the time she supposedly left to the time that she, between 7 and 9, he was timing how many cars went by, and he said there was like only 5 cars that went by the whole time. Yeah. And there's like, as I say, it's not.
And it was a Saturday morning, so you didn't have the commuters, people who lived in the neighborhoods up here going to Bishop to work or something like that. Not very many of them.
Yeah, it was during the weekend. It was Saturday morning. There was nobody there. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, where did she go? That's the question, is where did Karlie go? And we don't know. And like I said, the vast emptiness and not being near anything really leads.
When they had the ground search people, they would line up and just, comb that desert. Mm-hmm. They just lines of, like so many people, and they'd cover it in grids, and they just go along looking for any evidence on the ground. And with the helicopter was actually nearby for some training of some sort, and they diverted it over. I don't know what it was doing, but they diverted it for the rescue, because they didn't have a helicopter in the area. But they did have drones and stuff like that, and so they used everything. They searched all that.
Any cave or any coyote hole they found, they would search it. They looked everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's like, okay, what happened? It's either she died in her home and Zach and Melissa are covering it up, or she got down to Highway 6, where she was supposedly last seen, and somebody took her. That's literally got A or B. Mm-hmm. And it has to be pure happenstance. And the thing that's kind of confuses me, but when you're in a drug state, psychosis and stuff, doesn't matter. You're fearful. So I'm trying to figure out is how she got into the car. If she was in that state of mind, she wouldn't have gotten into a car. At least, unless it was a female or some another maybe. No. I don't know. It's bizarre, because she couldn't trust being around her friends who were her same age. The only person that she was allowing near her was her mother.
Or her stepmother.
Her stepmother.
Yeah.
It was the only person she was allowing near her. So I'm like.
She wanted her to stay with her that night.
Yeah.
She's sleep in here with me. She told her.
It's the only person. So for her to get into a car with someone she doesn't know that could be possibly male doesn't compute.
Yeah.
It's just like. She doesn't, there's a thing there. So there's a lot of questions when when you're looking at it from a psychological point of view, that don't fit. It's like she's exhibiting these behaviors, and because she's exhibiting these behaviors, these things over here don't match. She wouldn't get in if she's in the fight or flight mode. She may have gotten in the car just to get out of there, and then panicked and got out a lot farther down the road. And so they've done searches of like, I think it was, they say like 55-mile circumference down the road, and have not found anything. In case she got in the car, panicked, and then got out somewhere down the road. We don't know. Someone could have taken her down to Bishop, and she could be in Bishop. Who knows?
Yeah.
There's so many, not so many, but there are places that she could have found. But where did she go? We just don't.
Just whatever. She wouldn't have walked there. She wouldn't have gotten there by walking.
By foot. It's just too far.
Too far.
And the temperatures, like I said, goes from hot to cold and cold to hot, depending on if the sun is shining or not. So there's a lot of speculation. It being Saturday again, nobody was around. So it's like, how did she get where she went, wherever she went, if she did go somewhere, or did she die in there and Melissa and Zach are covering it up? I mean, it's, again, I don't know if they did anything, but I can't, it's, in a case like this, you just can't rule it out until you have physical evidence proving otherwise. We don't have that evidence. We have her last being seen. We do have witnesses saying that they did see her. But again, we don't know. We don't know. We just don't know. So, but again, this case is just, it's gone down many paths and many different theories. And in January of 2019, 18-year-old James Dooling, pleaded guilty to contributing to the delinquency of a minor in relation to Karlie's use of weed at the party the night before she disappeared. He initially had been arrested on allegations that he provided the weed to her, and also that something else might have been laced into it. The case is still being investigated as a missing persons case due to the lack of evidence that a crime has occurred. And what that essentially means is because they don't have her body, they don't have a crime scene, they don't have any, evidence.
No sign of blood or anything. No sign of
blood. They've investigated the home, they have her home, they've investigated everywhere. They don't have, for all they know, she could have wandered, got in a car and is living somewhere else. And in a drug-induced psychosis, that is entirely possible. You don't know. But again, they don't have any theories as to what happened, and etc. open to all the possibilities because of the area where she disappeared and the state that she was in. There's a lot of possibilities that what could happen. So they've kept them all open because they just don't know. And like again, it's still being investigated as a missing persons. There, any tips, any leads anybody has, they're willing to look at them. Although their tip line has received numerous phone calls, there have been no viable leads. Given the lack of evidence or direction, no one has been cleared of involvement and no one has been charged with relation to this case. So yes, Melissa and Zach are still considered persons of interest because they were the last two to see her alive. Mm-hmm. There's her brother. That was the other thing. Her brother Kate actually had come to the house in the middle of the night after he got off work to drop something off that Zach was going to need the next day, and saw the state that Karlie was in and just assumed that she was drunk or high or something and just kind of didn't think of it and walked away and left. She went back to his home or passed out on the couch or something. I'm not sure where he went after that. But, everybody is still considered a person of interest because we don't have any physical evidence to say otherwise. And until we do, they will remain people of interest. And if we do find evidence and DNA or something, it may jump up to you're a suspect. We don't, but right now we're not at that point, or either of the authorities. Again, but given the lack of evidence or direction, no one has been cleared of involvement. But with this case in particular, the media and the people that were working on this, there's been a massive downside to it. Downside of this case, and those who have damaged it, who are supposed to be helping, who seem to be helping, but ended up helping, not helping and damaging the
Yeah.
case more than helping. And, Barb actually looked into that. Again, this has been one of those cases where it literally is like mom versus mom, A versus B. People, oh, I think it's this person. Oh, I think it's that person.
Yeah.
And even Barb and I were both at odds with it for a while. It's just one of those things. And because of the stark separation, normally everyone's on the same side, but this is such a stark separation that it has developed some not so good things. And, Barb here is going to go into them. Barb?
Okay. Karlie's case has been hampered and sabotaged by the harmfully divided public opinions and time-wasting false tips and leads. A troublesome online chat group and a couple of opportunistic and unscrupulous private eyes actively bogging down the investigation with theories and accusations, and when asked, the proof is suddenly gone. The one PI was doxing innocent volunteers, causing people to back away from helping the case. 4 major professional organizations would no longer help with the investigation because of all the drama and the misinformation. Doxing is a form of cyberbullying. It's been around for
In case
ever.
like me, I didn't even know.
She'd never. I was totally shocked.
Never heard of the word doxing before?
Yeah, and it was what it started back in the days of hackers and stuff, and they would drop docs as in documents, and that's where they get doxing. It's a malicious act of posting someone's personal information online without their permission, ID, phone numbers, address, job, whatever they can find. Laws are finally catching up to the crime over the last couple of years. Another thing that it was called swatting, where you'd call the authorities and tell them there was a dangerous person here doing something. They'd send SWAT teams, some poor innocent person at home, just playing games on their computer. And these are very dangerous things to do because things could go so wrong. But the popularity of true crime interest had spawned a bunch of overly enthusiastic armchair sleuths who created an online chat group. That's a generous term. About the Karlie case, fantasizing about doing violent, discriminating, and dangerous acts towards the party they felt was guilty without any actual evidence or support. This was going on, and it was horrible. I read some of the posts. The court of public opinion is pretty divided between mom versus mom. Karlie's birth mom, Lindsay, is living in another state and sees herself as the fun parent. Melissa, her stepmom, raised Karlie since she was about 6. And Lindsay, Zach, and Melissa used to have a cordial relationship until Karlie vanished. And I think it was Lindsay who hired that really bad PI, unknowingly, because he volunteered his services, and she didn't look into it. There was also a PI, a female, who just lied everywhere. It was just ridiculous. They were trying to boost their reputation as PIs and then trying to prove it. It was crazy. Some of the stuff I read, it's just no room for it here. But if someone has a valid tip or lead, please do call it in, even if anonymously, but only if you witnessed it or you have firsthand knowledge, or your grandpa saw something and you call for them, that type of thing. But don't call in with hearsay or something you read online and say, why aren't they checking this? Investigators have to check all leads and have to sift through all those false and misleading tips. It's not helping to find Karlie. Remember, that is what's important here, finding Karlie. So if you do have something that you personally know, you saw, you witnessed, call that in. But if you're just passing on stuff you've heard or something like that, that's not something you call in.
If somebody, to kind of reiterate what she's saying, if it's something like, your friend came to you, your sister, your brother, whatever, and said, I think my friend was involved in this,
Yeah, something like that.
something like that, then say that you need to call. That's because it still can be hearsay if you say anything, because it's like, well, it's two-handed. But if your friend is telling you this, you need to tell your friend to call. And even, or you say, hey, I'll come with you. But again, the police have to investigate every tip that comes in. And when they're in this particular case, there were so many tips that were coming in because of armchair sleuths out there saying, well, I know this, or I think this, and just so many. And it bogged down the case, and it takes away from what they need to be doing, which is finding Karlie. And it's so I wanted to really implore that. And I'm glad Barb put it in. Excuse me. I'm glad that Barb put it in and brought it up, because it is important. We want those tips, but we want tips that are valid, that are not something like, oh, my uncle's brother's sister twice removed said that she saw a red truck that day.
Well, yeah, in the mom versus mom thing, that chat group was just playing into the stereotype of the fairy tale wicked stepmother. And so anything she said or did wrong, which in a frantic parental role, you do missteps and well, where the Dateline things where she was trying to backtrack when she realized, oh, they told me not to go on here. Now they're asking me questions, and how do I answer these and generically and stuff like that. It just blew up in her face because they were playing up the wicked stepmom thing, and when her real mom is the partier and ended up marrying a convicted sex offender. So so it's like who's the so this mom versus mom thing was just ridiculous and harmful.
Mom, not that I condone her marrying a sex offender or anything, but she does have a right to live her life. She did take the responsible thing and put her care of her children in that of their father and the stepmom, and she figured that they were safe and well taken care of. So in her defense, she had a right to live her life however she wanted to live it. And, so I can understand her being upset when her daughter turns up missing. Like, I placed my care of my child in your hands because I was incapable or unwilling to do so, to raise a child. It would be a better situation for her to remain with you. And you don't call the hospital. You don't take her to the hospital. Yeah. And now she's missing. Yeah, I'd be a little pissed off too.
Right.
And I'm not even directly involved in this thing. And I'm pissed off because I'm a parent. I'm going back to this. I'm a parent. I know if I put my care of my son into somebody, I've been there. I've had my son being cared for by people, and I get him back, and, they've given him something he's allergic to. I'm like, why did you know better than that,
It's in his records.
It's frustrating. And, and then you put your care of your child into somebody, and then they turn up missing, possibly dead. Who knows? It's I can understand her being upset. And at the same time, with what Melissa did, it does show discrepancy. It does show, her lies and stuff. Yes, she's like, well, I didn't know what to do, but is that, because she's already lied, is she lying about lying? And that's unfortunately the path that you go down when you're investigating. And that's something that is a target for any police officer to look at, is when your story, she told 5 or 6 different stories. And I'm like, the police look at that. And they're going, are you telling the truth? Do you really know what happened to your daughter? And it's, and the timeline being skewed. I mean, there's just so many things in there that are related to Melissa and Zach that I have to stop and wonder and think, do they actually know something? Did something really did happen in that home? And they're covering it up. I don't know, and I'm not and Zach, Melissa, if you watch this, I'm not pointing fingers at you at all whatsoever. I'm just saying, the evidence that's provided that we know is factual, we can't roll them out. Yeah. It just can't. And that's and that's where a lot of the arbitraries are like, well, it could have been, Melissa walking down. Well, yeah, it could have been, but not really, because there's a different body type. But it could have been somebody else relative that they could have gotten. Who knows the situation. But the private investigator, going back to again what Barbara said just a few minutes ago, the private investigator who was hired by Lindsay had said the sheriff's office had not followed proper protocol when investigating Karlie's disappearance, citing the fact that they didn't take her bedding for analysis. They also didn't search through the family cars. Lindsay fears her daughter may have overdosed on the night that she went missing, while Melissa believes that she was abducted. Lindsay recalls the chat that she had with her daughter in the weeks before her disappearance, where she asked about LSD. This led to her to suspect her daughter took the drug and was high that night. She feels Melissa awoke to find Karlie had died in the night and given the lack of credibility that Melissa had been presenting, as she shared 4 or 5 stories about the events of that night and the following morning. But then also Melissa denies any involvement in Karlie's disappearance. But like I said, we can't rule it out.
Yeah, that's the big problem. Is that the Lindsay and Zach and Melissa, they have no communication anymore. It is antagonistic because of the accusations. The accusations flying. And so instead of banding together and sharing information, it's fallen apart.
And that's unfortunately a lot of what happens when and that's why the police are always saying, do not lie. Do not ever. And I will implore this. Didn't matter if it's a missing person case, homicide, even petty crime. Never lie to the police, because it's going to be more trouble for you than it is for the police.
Yeah.
Because the police are going to find, if you are lying, the police are going to find out about it.
And then normally in the police, when they are investigating like the party house, the gathering, that they'll try to tell the kids, like, look, we're not going to arrest you or anything like that. We just want to know what happened. We need to know what exactly happened. Another one down the way, that's another story. But tonight, right now, we're not. Just tell us what happened. Get the bong, have it tested, whatever.
And they did all that.
And they did all that.
And it showed that there was just marijuana.
I'd heard this one though. Unfortunately, the local police, the Bishop police, threatened the kids. But they didn't go in and collect the stuff. They went up, bring us the bong. So that was really strange.
Yeah. But I've also seen where they went in and got the bong themselves. So that's what I'm saying. This is how much, one police report says this, the other one says that.
Yeah.
So what's the truth here, But they did take the bedding and they did do the testing. They did take her cell phone. They did do all the stuff that they were supposed to.
But see, that was the PI that she had hired, that he claimed feeding this, and he was
fear, which isn't healthy. Because in a situation like this was not healthy. It was basically feeding into her fears and her insecurities. Not good. But there have been several theories about Karlie and what happened, and we're going to go over some of them. The first one is that a theory provided by Lindsay and many online sleuths is that Karlie died as a result of a drug overdose. Many believe that she never made it out of the house alive, and some have noted that Karlie's erratic behavior could not have solely been the result of having smoked weed. This leads Lindsay to believe that her daughter had taken a stronger drug, possibly LSD, crystal meth, something along those lines. Or she explained her behavior and strange thoughts on the night that she went missing. And unfortunately, I have to partially agree with this one because, I keep coming back. I said, knowing what I know on a psychological level about Karlie's state of mind, whether she was on drugs, even if she wasn't it was a drug-induced psychosis, which can be brought on by LSD, crystal meth, marijuana, or a combination of such. And if she was if she was in that state, she needed help. And the fact she wasn't given help, and that can actually kill somebody. What a lot of people don't realize is that you can drink too much alcohol and get alcohol poisoning. And if you're not treated for alcohol poisoning, you will die.
Yeah, those fret things, the hazing. That's that's usually what happened. You get some poor schmuck who tried to join, and wasn't used to drinking like some of these guys did, and it was just too much.
And they die. So that's the same thing. It is very possible she did die, and then they panicked. I've seen it a lot in a lot of cases. You know, one of my theories for the John Benet Ramsey case and for the O.J. Simpson case is that the kids are the ones that are responsible. John Jr. in the John Benet one, and O.J.'s eldest son in his case. And that as parents, you know, we love our children and when they make mistakes, you know, especially something as grand as that, that we would do what we can to hide the truth and protect them and take the blame. And I think that's what happened in both of those cases. But I also think that's kind of what happened here, maybe, is that something happened to Karlie, and in the panic, because they had 3 other kids that they had to think of, the 2 younger boys and, of course, Kane, that, you know, we lost one child, we got to protect our family, and quickly did something to give an alibi. And it does fit. Sadly, it's one of those things, like I go back to it, you can't rule out. But, you know, like I said, the theory provided by Lindsay that Karlie overdosed, I mean, it could have happened. When they did test the marijuana they got from the party, they didn't appear to have anything in it. But knowing teenagers, you know, knowing they don't want to get into trouble, could have hid it before the police came to collect it. It's a possibility. But
nobody else had any kind of reaction to it.
It, though.
But if somebody slipped something to Karlie herself, you know, as a joke or something.
They offered her something and she tried it for the first time, that's a possibility. But the fact that it had lasted as long as the erratic behavior had lasted as long as it did, and the fact that prior to this, she was having moments, leads me more to the drug-induced psychosis. And I'll get into that here in a couple of minutes. But that theory is one that where she overdosed and that she, you know, was being covered up by the parents and whatnot. It's one that cannot be disproved. We can't, because we can't disprove it because we don't have the evidence to disprove it. It's still a very high possibility. We can't prove it one way or another. And the fact that he did leave to go up the mountain, yes, he claims it was to look over the valley, but he could have easily dumped her body somewhere temporarily. We don't know. It was also found out later that they did not search the buildings that were right next to the home. They only searched the home. So they could have just stored her body there temporarily until the thing went down and then took her off and dumped her. Because they are out in the middle of nowhere. He could have driven who knows where and dumped her. I mean, it could be anywhere. We don't know. Second theory, and a popular theory in this case as well, and one that has been suggested by Melissa and Zachary, is that Karlie was kidnapped, most likely while walking down Highway 6. During an interview with the Guse family, Dr. Phil speculated that she may have been picked up by human traffickers while walking along the highway, meaning there is a possibility she could still be alive and forced into work in prostitution. Yes, it's a possibility that could have happened, but the fact that nobody has saw her walking on that highway, again, it's another theory you can't disprove, because yes, human trafficking exists, and you never know who's driving up and down the road. But because it was a Saturday morning, and because there was not much traffic, is it possible? Yes. I'm not going to say it's not.
It would have been a crime of opportunity, because it's not like they were watching her and waiting for the opportunity. That it was, if it was just somebody who sold her to traffickers, somebody who just, oh, hey, look, Yeah. And because it's, not that often they wouldn't be trolling for somebody walking along that desert highway at 6 or 7 in the morning.
Yeah. So
but it would just be somebody said, oh, I know somebody who can, I know somebody who would like that and grab her.
It is a sound theory. I mean, that's what I can say. It is a sound theory. Could have it happened? Yeah.
It would explain the scent disappearing.
Yeah, that she was picked up.
So
there it leads to a big possibility that could be what happened.
Yeah.
But we don't have proof of
that.
Right. Another theory states that Karlie has disappeared. That Karlie's disappearance is related to that of Madeline Lingenfelter, who went missing in Reno, Nevada on September 19th, 2018. There is no evidence to support this theory, as Madeline's body was eventually located and her cause of death was deemed a suicide. People thought maybe Karlie, because of her depression, because of all the things she was going through, just went out and committed suicide. That one I can say for pretty much, I can say she did not do, because she was not in the state of mind to do something like that.
Yeah.
She was out of her mind. And when you're committing suicide, you are pretty much focused in knowing what you're doing. She did not know what she was doing. She was very much in the state of fight or flight. She was panicked. She was paranoid. She was acting that people were out to get her. So no. Did she commit suicide? I can almost say without a shadow of a doubt that she did not commit suicide. It just does not fit in this case whatsoever, one iota. Again, could it be related to Madeline's case? It's entirely possible. And then my theory, which is the drug-induced psychosis. And I fully believe this is kind of my opinion as to what happened, because it fits what was going on, not just in the 24 hours of the time she disappeared and then the initial thing, but things that had preceded it in the 6 months. Or came before it, excuse me, not preceded. But, psychosis is a mental health problem that temporarily causes somebody to interpret the world differently from those around them. A drug-induced psychosis happens when you experience episodes of psychosis, such as delusions or hallucinations, as a direct result of substance abuse. This can either worsen or trigger the onset of mental illnesses, such as bipolar and schizophrenia, which can be characterized by symptoms of psychosis. Drug-induced psychosis is often caused by taking too much of a certain drug, or that its level of toxicity provokes paranoia and a psychotic episode. It can also occur if you've had adverse reaction from mixing different substances or withdrawing from a drug prescribed or otherwise. Psychosis is often characterized as delusions or hallucinations which are experienced that are far removed from reality. Delusions are irrational beliefs that a person holds even when they are presented with evidence that contradicts these beliefs. Hallucinations refer to intense sensory perceptions of things that aren't real, are characterized by people vividly feeling, seeing, smelling, or hearing things that don't really exist, like somebody, watching them, that the speed of a car is going to kill them. These are all things that relate.
The devil's lettuce.
Devil's lettuce, Some of the symptoms of the drug-induced psychosis include paranoia, delusions, auditory and visual hallucinations, olfactory or smell hallucinations, smelling things that aren't there, antisocial behavior, panic attacks, and confusion. And these are all things that Karlie was experiencing. And essentially, to give a layman's term of what it is that when you're doing a drug, whether it's marijuana or something more severe like LSD or crystal meth or even prescription drugs, and your chemical in your body, if you are predispositioned to have like schizophrenia, bipolar, any of those kinds of things, and you take these drugs, and it basically weakens your reserve in your brain, the chemicals in your brain that help protect you from having breakdowns. And that's what I think was happening. She was doing marijuana, and she was doing a little bit at a time, which was relaxing her brain and allowing the disorder to appear. But it was only little blips. And then this last time, I think she got, like with any drug, anybody who knows about any kind of, whether it's illegal drugs or, legal drugs, it's like, when you're taking steroids or you're taking any kind of medication and you take it, over a period of time, it builds up into your system. And it becomes literally a part of your system. That's why people who are on long-term drugs, like thyroid medication and things like that, it's something that when you get off of it, it does affect you. Or antidepressants, things like that nature. It builds in your system to help and get like a balance. You maintain it. Once you get to that point and you're on that certain amount for a certain period of time, you're maintaining it. But with illegal drugs, because of the severity of it, and that's what you see it in our some celebrities like Whitney Houston, and just drug addicts in general. You know, you see their skin changes, their appearance changes, the rotting of the teeth, losing of the hair, the changing of the voice. They don't look healthy. And that's because it's affecting who they are. It's affecting their bodies over time. The more you take, and the more and more you use that drug, the worse it gets. And this is kind of what happened, I think, with Karlie. She had started taking pot. And while pot is normally a very mild type in the drug world, the milder of the drugs. And, you know, but if she's predispositioned to schizophrenia or something of the like, and she's taking this and it's showing those blips of what she was doing, and then she had the big dose or whatever happened on that night, triggered her complete psychosis, drug-induced psychosis. It was enough. She had gotten enough in her system over the last 6 to 8 months that she'd been doing it. It was like a whammy, and that was it.
And it was also the reports that young people, teenagers, because their brains aren't fully developed, that it can take hold quicker than, you know,
An
people who were
adult,
older.
too.
Yeah.
But she was a young girl. You know, she'd been doing it, and it built up in her system over time, and then she got enough in it to the point where her body just said, okay, that's it, we're done, and lapsed into, you know, it basically
weren't ready for this.
We weren't ready for this. She went into schizophrenia because she didn't have, you know, the schizophrenia part of it. It shows the memory, you know, that she doesn't have, can't remember what she's doing. You know, there's also grandiose delusions, jealousy delusions, persecution delusions. So she was having all these delusions. You know, like where you believe someone was spying on you, which is the persecution delusions, or jealousy involved a partner where you may believe that the partner has been unfaithful. I don't think she had those yet, but she definitely did have the persecution delusions and the grandiose delusions, which is experiencing exaggerated sense of, you know, power, believing that, you know, you may have magical abilities or you made a discovery. And she did have a little bit of that, according to Melissa. You know, she was talking out of her mind, talking about that she has magical, she can, you know, has a magic wand or something. You can actually hear it in the audio. So there's a little bit of that there. Maybe not as excuse me, maybe not as pronounced, but a lot of these solutions is what can be symptoms of a cannabis addiction. You know, she could have been starting it, but she was addicted to it, and she was being weaned off of it, and her body's in that state of flux, and then she gets a huge dose of it that night, which also can lapse her into a drug-induced psychosis, which is what I truly think is what happened. She was in that psychosis, she was in the fight or flight, and she couldn't come out of it. Because once you get into it 100%, you can't get out of it without help, without intervention. And she didn't get that.
Yeah.
And you're in that fight or flight, you're in that state of delusion. You wake up, you know, she woke up, she saw she was still affected by it. He's like, oh, she could sleep it off and she'll be fine. No. Not when it's a condition that once you snap into it, it takes medication and intervention to snap out of it. And there are people that I know that I've worked with and have dealt with who had been in a drug-induced psychosis and are still affected by it and are still getting, you know, treatment for it years and years later. It can almost go into a dissociative disorder, which is another way of saying multiple personalities, where the brain is divided. And literally, I've seen a case where there's a woman who had a drug-induced psychosis, and she had lost who she was, had no memory of who she was, and she left and took off and lived a life, not knowing. I mean, she was functional, but she didn't realize she was living a life that wasn't hers. You know, in her real life, she was left-handed, but in this fake life, she was right-handed. In her real life, she was an incredible mathematician and scientist kind of person, very much that. And in the new life, she was very artsy kind of person, did a lot of music and dancing and singing and things of artistic nature. So it was like literally down her part of it. And it wasn't until she I don't know if it was a car accident or some kind of medical thing that she needed, and they were testing her blood, and she kept saying, well, I have AB blood, when in actuality she had O positive blood. And she was describing, they're asking where she grew up, and she's like, well, talking about the desert, where she lived currently, but the way she was describing was places like up in the mountains, big, huge evergreen trees and snow, And so they sent her image to people, and they found out that she had disappeared several years earlier up north in the mountain area. I think it was like Montana or something like that. I don't remember exactly where. And that they'd been looking for her. And she literally had lived a whole new life and had no idea. And that's what happened. She was always, her friends in the desert, she was in Arizona, would say that she did act paranoid from time to time, or she was always watching her back as if someone was watching her. But they didn't understand who would be doing that. She didn't, and there was those moments of the psychosis. It's always, the paranoia is always going to be there. The erotic behavior is going to always be there. It might not be there every day or all the time, but it's still always going to be in the background, which is what I believe is going on. If she did get picked up and walked away, she's still in that psychosis. She still hasn't been treated, probably, and she's still going to have those moments of paranoia and hallucinations, and she's not going to know who she is. She may have a whole new name and a whole new life and a new identity, and we just don't know it. And that's the sad part about drug-induced psychosis. It can happen, and without being treated, you may not even know about it. So that is my theory, I think, is what truly happened, is that she went into that drug-induced psychosis and was in the fight or flight and woke up that morning, and either she overdosed and died, or she took off and was picking up. I mean, literally the only two solutions that are there. And she was in that drug-induced psychosis, and that is what caused her to act or interact the way she was. Now, Barb has a theory, along with that, that she came across. This is the fourth witness, and this is Barb's theory. Barb?
Yeah. One theory that was she was picked up, possibly willingly, and taken to Tonopah, Nevada, about 100 miles northeast. A few years after she vanished, a young man came forward after feeling guilty for not saying something sooner. I think they'd heard about her, the people in the car, but figured she was running away and helped. He gave the authorities the description and current location of the vehicle they had ridden in. Items from it are still being tested for DNA, etc. This is a long process, and results won't be back in an hour like on the crime shows. So, but if she did have a psychotic break, which I'm fully on board on that one, from her excessive pot use, it's possible she didn't know or care who she was and just joined these people heading to Tonopah and started a new life. That she had a total break from Karlie. She wasn't Karlie anymore, and so had one of those flat periods where she was and got into a car and said, "Okay, yeah, let's go party." There had been reported, let's see, if she did have the break and she just joined these people heading to Tonopah, started a new life, could explain the reported sightings of her there. Or tragically, she could be living anonymously on the streets, no longer resembling her photos on the missing posters. Total personality change, got rid of her long hair, colored it weird, and is just totally different, does not know who she is, like that woman.
Yeah, I mean, she was taken, like, Tonopah, Nevada, which is 100 miles northeast of where Karlie disappeared. And
yeah, they had the posters up there and everything, but if she doesn't look like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know, and it's a high possibility that could be what happened. I mean, she just disappeared, like, poof, and she's gone. And it's sad because this was such a preventable case.
Yeah.
If they had just taken her to the hospital, and people are like, well, then we have to fault the parents. And I don't want to say it, but yeah, you have to. I mean, you just can't. You didn't do what you should have done, and as a result of that, Karlie's missing. Now, is it her fault that she's missing? Possibility. If she did die of a drug overdose and they're covering it up, yes. If she did wander away and got picked up somewhere, then they're still responsible because they had a responsibility to take her to the hospital.
Yeah.
But they aren't responsible for her being picked up. it happens. But in the aftermath of everything, I mean, she's still missing. She would be 24 today. She was 16 when she disappeared. She would be 24 today. The Bring Karlie Home and the Justice for Karlie Guse Facebook pages have been created to help raise awareness on the case and get the information out there, updates, etc. Karlie's disappearance has been featured twice on the Dr. Phil show, with her mother, father, and stepmother all making appearances. The case has also been covered on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace podcast and her TV show on Fox. The case has also appeared on the People magazine Investigates, which is where I found it. Mm-hmm. And you know, they're trying to get the story out there. They're hitting some big shows and stuff like that. But you know, it may or may not be enough. I mean, we need the tips. We need to know somebody who knows, and we hope that again that the DNA from the truck will show something. But right now, the police are looking at it. Well, they got to take it with a grain of salt a little bit, because the individual had a potential of being a former drug addict and could have been high at the time that this happened. So they have to take it with a grain of salt. In the court's eyes, you know, is he a credible witness? They're not discrediting him. They are testing the DNA, but again, it can take up to a couple of years to get DNA back, especially in California because of the size of the state.
Yeah.
So they're waiting. They're not discrediting him completely, but they're kind of putting it on the back burner until something, you know, it's a possibility. You know, they're still working on it. So, but again, you know, they got to take it with a grain of salt, because they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, and it turns out that the guy was high and didn't have any clue what he was talking about, that it was some other girl they picked up 200 miles away. And another rural desolate. Who knows? We don't know. Throughout the course of the investigation, the family has been subjected to ridicule and cruel comments by those online who believe Melissa and Zachary has something to do with the disappearance. And again, that's going back to what Barb said earlier, you know, it's been cruel to them, but at the same time, they kind of put their own target on their own back by their deceptive behavior. So, and unfortunately, that has been a big factor in this case. And the police have had to stop their investigation and have asked people to leave them alone, and it's taking away from what's truly important, which is finding Karlie. Yeah. So that's why we're saying, you know, if you don't have if you're looking, you know, giving evidence that you see online, that doesn't help. You know, if you're not physically there, you don't physically have, you know, it's something you're hearing that's from somebody. No, we don't want that. Something that's also very neat, and I think it's neat that Bishop is doing, but at the beginning of every football game at the Bishop Union High School, is where Karlie attended, the announcer reminds attendees to keep Karlie in their thoughts and prayers. And they still do that to this day. They're still doing that, saying, hey, if you have any tips, you can do it anonymously. Yeah. You know, again, I'll have all the numbers posted in the description like we always do. If you know anything or have heard anything, where to give your tips to. Lindsay has kept up a constant stream of social media posts to keep awareness on the case in the public eye. She has pleaded with anyone with information to come forward and report what they know to the authorities. So again, you know, we need tips. We desperately need tips to help bring Karlie home. Any kind of, even if the parents are involved, if you're the next door neighbor or people who know them and they've talked about what they've done, certain statements they may have made that may have lead towards that maybe that they had something to do with it, please bring it forward. You can do it anonymously. And again, you know, Guse family, if you're watching this, I'm not saying that you guys are guilty or that you guys are involved with her disappearance. I'm just saying that they were just saying, hey, if there is something that they may know, please, you know, which our goal is to bring Karlie home and to bring closure to this case. That is our true goal. And, you know, sometimes it is the parents that are involved and sometimes it's not. And we hope in this case that Zach and Melissa are innocent. That's what we are hoping. But again, like I said earlier, we can't rule it out. We have to look at everything and all the evidence that we have at hand, and once we get enough evidence that we can rule them out, I'd be thrilled with that if we could. But we can only do that with tips that you out there in the world need to give. To summarize, today's case was about Karlie Lain Gusé, who was missing from Chalfant, Mono County, California in the early hours of October the 13th, 2018. She was 16 years old and was believed to have been wearing a white t-shirt, Vans shoes, and either dark gray sweatpants or a pair of skinny jeans. It has been noted that she was not dressed for the harsh elements of the surrounding desert. At the time of her disappearance, she stood at 5'7" and weighed 110 pounds. She had brown hair and blue eyes, and her left nostril was pierced. Currently, her case is classified as an endangered missing, and if alive, she would be about 24 years of age. So, those are just basically a summarized version of when she was last seen, what she was looking like. You'll see the photo that you see at the very beginning of this, the thumbnail is Karlie. That's what she looks like. If you see her or know someone who's seen her, please say something or get them to say something, because we need the tips to be able to not only find Karlie, but to help rule out things. Because right now we can't rule out anything in this case. It could be anything. So any support out there in the world would be the authorities would greatly appreciate for it. So again, we thank you for listening and taking the journey with us as we delved into Karlie's case. And again, like I said, this is just it's a bizarre case out there. It's full of, one that could have been so preventable, but because of where it's at, in the desolate area where it's at, it's unique into itself. So, but if you have any tips or information about Karlie and what happened to her, please call the numbers that we've listed below. And again, you can do it anonymously. Every tip and every bit of information can lead us to finding closure for the family, finding Karlie, and to bring those guilty of possibly taking Karlie to justice. Whether it's her family, whether it's some stranger who kidnapped her, whatever the situation may be, we need the tips and the tips and information to help resolve the situation. So if you know anything, please call. It's not too late. Anything helps. Next time, we have another riveting case for you, that of Morgan Nick. She was a 6-year-old little girl who disappeared out of Alma, Arkansas in 1995 and has never been seen again. And that case in particular, the Morgan Nick case, is the one that actually got me into wanting to help families of the lost. And it got me into wanting to become a forensic psychologist and a behavioral analyst because of Morgan and her case, because of the expanse of it. And there's a recent documentary. I'll get the words out. There's a recent documentary. Yeah. Oh, hush. A recent documentary that came on Hulu about still missing Morgan. And we'll go more into that next time. But it opened my eyes to other things in the case that I did not know about that strengthen what I had already initially thought, but it's another case out there of another little girl that's missing, and hopefully bringing this out maybe help find out who did it. Again, always thank you so much for all the support. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. If you have any cases you want us to cover, please comment down below. From your world or from your part of the world, or your part of the country, or whatever. If you have any that you want us to look at, submit them. And also, please mention if we're allowed to use your name or handle if we choose your story. So, and then even if it's your own story, we'd be happy to tell it as well. So, but that is all that we have for you today. Again, our next episode about Morgan will drop in the next couple of weeks. Please stay safe out there, everyone. Please be observant of you and your surroundings and that of your loved ones. And take care. So until the next time, this is Juliana.
And Barb, signing off.
Bye, guys. Bye.